Morning.
Morning.
I'm not a lecturer, but merely a poor player. Therefore, this morning, you good people are doomed to disappointment. I have often and regularly made it known that I do not perform or take the stage in a lecture platform. But given the nature of today, the celebration of that portrait by Mr. John Singer Sargent, I have agreed to speak a bit upon my life which led to the man that you see in that portrait. As I have learned from sitting where you are sitting, that when words are scarce, they are seldom spent in vain. And so, taking Master Shakespeare's advice, I will be brief. I have toured throughout Europe. I've met royalty. I've been called one of the greatest American actors of my generation. And this is not to sing my praise, but rather to position my founding of the Players' Club, for which the portrait was painted, as, in my opinion, one of the greatest accomplishments of my life. The portrait we are celebrating was painted to hang in the Players' Club by Mr. Sargent. Several members of the Players approached Mr. Sargent for a possible commission and found that he was anxious and amenable to try and capture the likeness, mine, of a man whose main occupation it was to create a multitude of faces. The challenge, to find the man behind the mask. The Players was an idea of mine that began to take shape, as I remember, in 1887, on a leisurely ride in my friend and banker, E.C. Benedict's yacht. We had picked up Lawrence Barrett, who later became a member and a partner in my acting company, Thomas Aldrich, friend and author, and Lawrence Hutton, friend and theater critic. As we sat on lawn chairs looking out upon the New England coast, I spoke of a place where an actor might come and not be looked upon as a performing seal, but rather as a thinking human being, to mingle with other professions, speak of his craft, and also of politics and women, business and baseball. I laid out my idea before the gentlemen gathered, and all agreed with my initial idea, and I think it was Aldrich who came up with the name The Players, and we all agreed it was fitting. I purchased a building at 16 Gramercy Park South, hired architect Stanford White, who became a member, and construction began. Yes, I thought, and I felt at the time, and I still do, that we actors do not mingle enough with minds that influence the world. Those outside the theater. I believe that we should measure ourselves by the personal contact that we have with outsiders. And so, among the founders of the Players are Samuel Clemens, who writes under the name Mark Twain, and General William Tecumseh Sherman. Actors tend to desire isolation with their own kind. But I did not want my club to be a gathering place where eccentrics come to gather to look upon other eccentrics. I wanted real men who would realize and appreciate what actors are. Men who are in the business of communication. I wanted the Players to be a place where actors are away from the glamour of the theater. A club where actors could be valued and welcome. And I'm pleased to think that is exactly what it has become. When I met with Mr. Sargent, he immediately suggested that I pose in a characteristic pose as one went off stage, away from the theater. For some reason, this pleased me immensely. With that suggestion, I understood and knew that Mr. Sargent understood how I wanted the portrait to appear, and he also understood the players. It is not a theater. It is not a stage. It is a home. Some argue that the idea too commonplace, that I should pose as Hamlet or in costume, but Mr. Sargent was very clear in his wish to show me at home. And so there I stand, in front of the grand fireplace, in the club's hallway. Mr. Sargent and I, we spoke of the body, how it tells a story. Actors and portraitists understand that. And I confess that the pose he chose as being my natural pose is one that I often find myself manifesting when on stage, as well as in life, in Hamlet, or Lear, or in the Scottish play. Yes, and we spoke of my performances and how they are often hailed for their naturalness. And we agreed that when one comes to the theater to view my Hamlet, they are, of course, to a large extent, viewing me. I am the lens through which Hamlet manifests. As I grow older, perhaps I should say as I mature, I find myself more and more adopting the conversational, colloquial school so much in vogue these days in the theater. Now, of course, with Shakespeare, too much realism is dangerous. Shakespeare is not and should not be commonplace, as we are seeing with the Bancrofts and Irving today. But Shakespeare is of this world. And there is a truth to be found within the words when they are carried with a natural and not a forced delivery. My notes to actors and regarding acting are always play down, play in subdued tones. And of course, when you are speaking, and as you speak in a natural style, you are no longer reciting. And that is when the personal is revealed. Shakespeare himself says it in Hamlet. When Hamlet is speaking to the players regarding the art of acting, Hamlet 3, Act 3, Scene 2. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you trippingly on the tongue. But if you mouth it, as many of our players do, I had as lief the town crier spoke my lines. Nor do not saw the air too much with your hands thus, but use all gently. Or in the very torrent, tempest, and as I may say, whirlwind of your passion, you must acquire and beget the temperance that may give it smoothness. Oh, it offends me to the soul to hear a robustious, periwig-pated fellow tear a passion to tatters, to very rags, to split the ears of the groundlings who, for the most part, have been capable of nothing but inexplicable dumb shows and noise. Pray, avoid it. Be not too tame, neither, but let your own discretion be your tutor. Suit the action to the word to the action with this special observance, that you not o'erstep the modesty of nature. For anything so overdone is from the purpose of play, whose end both at the first and now was and is to hold, as 'twere, the mirror up to nature, to show virtue her own feature, scorn his own image, and the very age and body of the time is form and pressure. Now, this overdone, or come tardy off, though it make the unskillful laugh, cannot but make the judicious grieve. The censure of the which one must in your allowance o'erweigh a whole theatre of others. Oh, I have seen players play, and heard others praise, and that highly, not to speak profanely, and having neither the accent of Christians, nor the gait of Christians, nor pagan, or man, have so strutted and bowed, as I have thought them of nature's journeymen had made men, and not made them well. They imitated humanity so abominably. Reform it altogether, and let those that play your clowns speak no more than is set down to them. For they be of them, and will themselves gather some secret base subscriber to make them laugh also. Though in the meantime some necessary question of the play be then to be considered. That is villainous, and shows a most pitiful ambition to the fool who uses it. The duty of the actor is to reveal the inner man, as is the duty of the portraitist. Mr. Sargent is correct. The private is the public in our businesses. I have been asked countless times how I'm able to play the deeply difficult, tragic scenes of Shakespeare. In part, it is because my life has not been bereft of tragedy. I lost my first wife, Mary Devlin, when she was just 23. She left me with my only child, an infant, Edwina, my daughter. As an actor, before Mary's death, I'd always played the tragedy. After her death, I no longer needed to play it, because it now lived inside of me. I merely needed to review it. I had left Mary 2 weeks earlier to play Hamlet in New York and then Boston. A confession this morning for something that happened decades ago. The night I was called to her deathbed, I was drunk on the stage. A hereditary affliction, I'm afraid, from my genius father, the great actor Junius Brutus Booth. It had become a frequent and recurring event, and one that Mary had desperately tried to help me avoid and conquer. On a particular performance in Boston, I received a telegram that Mary had become gravely ill, and her health had turned to the worse, and I rushed back to the bedside. But she was gone. Do I hold myself responsible? Yes, of course. I had received telegrams telling me earlier that she has become ill, but not to worry. Should I have returned? Yes, of course. 2 days before Mary left this world for a better place. I was in New York, in bed. It was a little past 2 a.m., and I was awake. I felt a strange puff of air on my right cheek, twice. It startled me so that I was thoroughly awake. I turned over, when I felt the same thing on my left cheek. 2 puffs of air. Ghost kisses. I lay there awake, wondering what could mean, when I distinctly heard these words. Come to me, darling. I'm almost frozen. I heard them as plainly as I hear my own voice now. I did not go to her. 2 years later, I was again in Boston at the Parker House on a leisurely dinner with friends. It was probably around 12:30. The door opened, and a boy entered with a telegram. He handed it to me. I opened it. I read it. And I said, "My God!" I sunk down. I put my head on the table. And I do recall that someone had picked up the telegram and read it aloud. John Wilkes Booth has shot Abraham Lincoln at the Ford's Theater tonight. My brother was of a gentle and very loving disposition, very boyish and full of fun. When on our farm in Maryland, he used to ride on horseback as a young man, John, through the woods, spouting heroic speeches. I regarded him as good-natured, harmless. I loved him, of course. I used to laugh at his patriotic froth whenever secession was discussed. And when I told him that I had voted for Lincoln's re-election, he showed deep regret and declared his opinion that Abraham Lincoln would be made King of America. I did not see it coming at all. No one did. He was our mother's darling, and his deed and his death crushed her spirit. I was arrested that day. My rooms were searched. I was eventually released. Initially, though, I received nothing but threats. New York, May 1, 1865. Edwin Booth. Sir, you are advised to leave this city and this country forthwith. Your life will be the penalty if you tarry here 48 hours longer. Revolvers are already ready with which to shoot you down. You are a traitor to this government, or have been since your brother's bloody deed. Herein you have due warning. Lose no time in arranging for your departure. We hate the name of Booth. Leave quick, or remember. President Lincoln was my president. I had a deep admiration for his noble career and his Christian principles. He had received my vote. A day earlier, I had been one of the happiest men alive. General Grant's magnificent work accomplished, and sweet peace smiling her radiant face again upon our country. Eventually, support returned my way, and a deep sympathy was placed upon my family by the American people, and I was invited again back onto stage to continue my career. And several years later, a trunk arrived for me at the Booth Theater in New York. A trunk I had searched for many years. It was the trunk containing my brother's theatrical costumes. I had searched for it and tracked it down, and now it was in my possession. The day it arrived, I gave Gary Davidson, our property man of the theater, instructions to wake me at 3 a.m. He did so. We met down in the furnace room of the theater where I had ordered the trunk to be placed. I opened the trunk, and I pulled out the first piece. A Louis XVI coat of steel blue. Put it in there. I handed him the coat, and Mr. Davidson placed it in the burning furnace. And I did this with several other costumes, until I pulled out a long, belted, purple velvet shirt ornamented with jewels. It was creased and worn in places. I looked at it a long time. My father had worn this in his Richard III. He had worn this very shirt in Boston on the first night I went on stage. I put it in the fire. We are the sum of all our experiences, and it is the portraitist's job to reveal those experiences with an artist's sensibility. It should not condemn, it should not quit. It should merely reveal. In looking at Mr. Sargent's portrait of me, he has revealed everything that I am.